anybody who wants to be involved, there's a program that happens right after this every Wednesday night called Partners in Torah. Partners in Torah is a great program where a person can actually have a study partner, one-on-one, right? Learning a topic of your choice, whatever it is, there's no limitations. And if you want to, you can sign up with Miss Chaviva Gronitsky, who will be wandering around here, or Rabbi Wolbe, or let me know about it, and we'll set you up in a program. Anyone's invited, and of course there's always food or whatever tchotchke Ryan you need. Okay? And with that, we're going to let you know that we're recording this for a podcast, right? And so therefore, please write all your questions down somewhere on the margin or wherever, and leave them for the end, and we'll be happy to have time to leave for you to do that. Okay, so this is Kabbalah 101. We're starting from the very beginning. We're using a book that I wrote many years ago called The Study of Kabbalah that was written way back when in San Antonio. I use it as a workbook, and it goes basically through all of the basic features of Lurianic Kabbalah. Lurianic Kabbalah was the head Kabbalist, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria of the 16th century, and he innovated and explained many ideas. And so these few coming classes that we're going to have, tonight's class we're going to talk about what's called the Tzimtzum, and the next class will be called the 5 universes and the 5 levels of soul, and then we talk about the Sfirot, and then the shattering of the vessels, and that'll conclude this segment. But tonight we're going to take you on the jungle cruise, okay, the jungle guide. I look at myself, really. I've been through the jungle a few times, but I'm not an expert on the jungle man, okay? So I got a backpack. I know my way around. I've navigated it, but, and we're going to look at things along the way, okay? I'm going to show you what's to the left, what's to the right, and show you things and expose you to things. Most of what I do is I'm exposing you to texts, okay? And the text that we're going to be exposed to tonight has to do with one of the very first things that Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, the Arizal, talks about. So I figured that would be a great place to start. But the way he wrote it down, and the way we always have to understand it, okay, is he's very abstract, okay? So in other words, he's going to give you a formula, XY equals PDQ, divided by 8 times 7, and, so he's going to give us abstract things, and then it's up to us, and thank God we have a lot of commentators of later Kabbalists who have managed to, in somewhat explain and help us to make these things more relevant, because they are going to be very abstract, okay? So here we go in the jungle, okay? Keep your arms to your side, make sure your seatbelts are fastened, and do not exit until the car has come to a complete stop, okay? So here we're starting with the Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum literally means contraction or constriction, and refers to the process by which God withdrew the light of the infinite in order to create the universe. Because obviously, what it's going to bring down in the text is God began in one simple unity, of course. Before creation came to be a creation, God existed on the level of what we'll call one simple unity. Okay. So,
in here?
all right. So, here's how we go. Da. I'm going to read it in Hebrew, and the English is, to my best of my ability, was able to do it. Okay? Da. Ki terem shene'etzalu hane'etzalim v'nivru hanivraim haya or elyon pashut mamale kol hametziut. So, but know that before all things were emanated and created, there was only supernal light that was simply filling all of existence. Now, I like to look at the Hebrew. Don't forget, I did this quite a while ago, and my way of translating terms has somewhat changed. And the way we say that, first of all, you always have to be exact on every single word. And you have to always ask in the back of your mind, why did it use this word emanated and created? Okay? So many words to describe what is about to take place. But the real idea here is that what is it saying is that before anything that happened, there was something called an Or Elyon. An Or Elyon, which means an Or obviously is light, and Elyon I translate it as supernal, but I like to use a different term. Okay? Elyon literally means upper, sublime. I like to use cosmic because it's beyond. Okay? But this simple light is pashut. It's very simple and filling all of existence. There was no empty space that would be called space, emptiness, or void. Nothing. Min or Ein Sof. Everything was filled what we call or Ein Sof. Simple. It did not have a head, what we call a beginning, and did not have an end. Rather, Hakol Haya Or Echad Pashut. Everything was one simple, undifferentiated light, equal in all sides. And this is called the Or Ein Sof, or the light of the Ein Sof. And here's where we have to be exact and very specific here in terms of our exploration. And here's what I wrote here. The Or Ein Sof, as I'm going to describe here, okay, is the classic term actually as two words, Ein, which means not, and Sof, which means end. When we want to talk about God in terms of the highest concept possible, we always will refer to it as Ein Sof, no end. You can also look at it like, why not also no beginning? Okay, I was in a class teaching teens in a Russian high school, and they always ask the question, well, who made God, right? And I would just smile from ear to ear, and I go, no one made him, he always existed. Isn't that cool? And they would like sit there and they couldn't figure it out, okay? Because it is way beyond when you go to no beginning, that no one made him and it always existed. Ein Sof, no end, is something we could, at least on our little level, can somewhat grasp with, okay? But the distinction here that you always have to understand is we're going to call it Or Ein Sof, the light of the infinite, okay? Not the infinite itself, as I write here, okay? Because Judaism realizes there can be no concept attached to the essence of God. Rule number 1 in Judaism, God's essence can never be put into a concept whatsoever. Because as soon as you come up with a concept, he's not that. Okay? That's a very, very important rule in Judaism. When we say just no body parts, we're going way beyond that. Okay? There is no images. There really is not even a concept. Because you cannot fathom the isness, okay, the infinite intelligence that created us. As soon as you say a word, it's already a concept, and it's already limited. And the essence of God is completely unlimited, beyond concept. So as I write here, we can never speak of him in terms of his essence, rule number 1. As soon as the human intellect comes up with a concept for God, it's already limited. God's essence has no limit, and we accept him. And we accept that we cannot touch it. We can only touch that which emanates from him. Therefore, the highest possible concept we can have is a negation word. It's a not that. Okay? My father-in-law, would always say, okay, who's the guy who's closest to God? Okay, a higher concept. So if a guy comes in the room and says, I got it. God is not the table. I got it. He's not the table. And if someone else comes in and says, God is not the table and not the chair. So the person who says he's not the table and not the chair has a higher concept. The more you not, the more closer you are. Okay? It's unbelievable. It's almost like it's a complete negative. Okay? Not end. We are talking about an isness, which I use a lot of times to help me to pull in, as we'll describe in later classes. Because really, if you use the word, the classic name of God that we have, of the highest name of God, is Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's 4 letters. Yud and a Hey, and a Vav and a Hey. Now those letters spell out basically 3 words in Hebrew. Haya, Hoveh, V'yiyeh. Was, Haya, Hoveh is, V'yiyeh will be. As a matter of fact, that is the kavanah. Every time you say God's name in any prayer, you got to stop and put yourself in the field, in the zone of Haya, Hoveh, V'yiyeh. Was, is, and will be. Every time. You got to stop. You can't do ma. Keep going. Stop and go into that. Now, the Kabbalists also really explain Haya, Hoveh, V'yiyeh, was, is, and will be, is a time concept already. And that also really is because we are time-bound entities. We need the was, is, and will be. It's really handles for us. Because really, in terms of God, He's Tamid B'Hoveh. He's always present. He's always in present tense. There is no space, there is no time associated with God. Okay? But in any case, that's why I go into the isness, which no one created, always existed, past, present, and future. This is itself, if you just get into that, is a great meditation. Okay? And all present, absolute existence, and all of these are only descriptions, not even touching His essence. Everything that we say, every word, every concept is only what? It's a descriptive term, and therefore it never touches God's essence. The Or Ein Sof, on the other hand, is which emanates from Him, okay, from His essence. It is the highest conceptual category that we have to relate to. Or Ein Sof. It's the light of the infinite, okay? Something that came from the Ein Sof, the infinite. It is the light of the infinite. It refers to the light God brought into existence to create the world. Yet it partakes of Ein Sof, so nothing independent can exist there. It is related to what we call what Rabbi Kaplan calls the mathematical concept of infinity, and I'm not even sure that I grasp that myself. But what we will say is, square one, go back, right? God, before the creation, filled all of existence in one simple light. Obviously, he's hinting here, simple light. The light itself had to be created. Okay? So now in our earthly terms, we're going to look at it like this. It went upon God's mind to make a creation. Right? And we discussed this last week. Why did God make a creation? In order to bestow pleasure. All my students, you've got to have that if I wake you up at 3 a.m. Bestow pleasure. Okay? So, to bestow pleasure. So instantly, when it went up on God's mind, a will to bestow pleasure, and that's already weird. Okay, I'm sorry. Will to bestow pleasure. God has a will. Even that is like way beyond. That's a concept. He's beyond that. So, the will to bestow pleasure is, what is that pleasure? What is that will? What is that giving? Or Ein Sof, the light of the infinite. Every single thing that the creation is meant to connect to is Or Ein Sof, the light of the infinite. Okay? Okay, going on in the text. וכאשר עלה ברצונו הפשוט לברוא את העולמות ולהציל הנצלים, להוציא לאור שלמות פעולותיו ושמותיו וכנוייו. When it rose in his simple will to create the worlds, to emanate that which became emanated, to bring to light the completion of his acts and names and nicknames, which is the purpose of creation of all of these worlds. Wait a minute, Rabbi. Let's look at that sentence again. It rose up on his simple will to create the worlds and to bring out that which is emanated, right? Why? Lahotzi la'or shlemus pulosav. Shlemus pulosav, I'm saying in Hebrew, the completion of his acts. What does that mean? Completion of his acts. Ushmotav, and his names. Ukinuyav, and his nicknames. So we have 3 things here. Okay? I'll tie them all into one. And the biggest question you should smack me is, wait a minute, Rabbi. You told me the purpose of creation was to bestow pleasure. And here it's saying something different. Completion of his acts, names, nicknames. Okay? Wait a minute. I thought it's bestow pleasure. So it was taught to me by my father-in-law that really we can look at the purpose of creation very much in almost like three circles, one inside the other. There's the outer, more surface. There's the little bit more inner, and then there's the total inner. So kind of like three kind of layers of the purpose of creation. The external outer layer is what he says here. Names and nicknames. In order to be called compassionate. So God wanted to be called compassionate, so he needs somebody who's going to recognize you're compassionate. Okay? Or you want to be called merciful. There's got to be someone who's going to call him merciful. So in other words, we'll just sum it up. Relationship. Okay? It's all about relationship. Now, Shleimus Pulosav is an amazing thing. The Leshem does go into this. Because obviously we have to say God does not need, God forbid, to make a creation. He willed it. Okay? He willed it. And the purpose is why? For what for? What purpose? Just to bestow. What is he, bored? Like we are? No. Okay? So the idea of what we call it is an expression. The Ein Sof is in expression mode. Okay? The is in expression mode. And there is infinite expressions of the Creator. Okay? That exist. Our whole universe is just one. Okay? Of infinite. So Shleimus Pulosav is God wants to, as we would probably say in very crude earthly terms, flex a muscle. Okay? Express. It's an expression. Okay? And of course, the nicknames are also very similar, like we said, Rachum v'Chanun, merciful and compassionate. Asher zos hayasiba b'rias olamat. And of course, he says here, this is the act. So the outer layer, we said three circles, right? The outer one was to be called compassionate, merciful, right? A little bit more inner was what I talked about last week, which was, we'll call it simply in the category of reward and punishment, even though we don't like to use the word punishment. But basically, God wants to bestow pleasure. You need free will. You get to choose how much pleasure you're going to take. In other words, you're going to go infinite, or you're going to reduce it, or you're going to go limited. Okay? You got to go to God with a truckload or a Dixie cup. Okay? So the idea of reward and punishment, we don't like to use punishment when we talk about God. It's really what it is. It's a consequence of your actions and your decisions and your thoughts. Okay? We're here to expand our vessel as much as possible. And any reduction in that, what does it cause? It causes a reduction in the amount of light that is received, the amount of light that's given. So that we would call a punishment. Punishment is like just a consequence. Okay? Okay. V'hine az, so then when it went upon his mind, tzimtzem et atzmo, he constricted himself, tzimtzem et atzmo ein sof b'nekuda ha'emtzait asher bo, in the middle point which was in him, be'em sa'oro, in the middle of his light mamash. Okay? So this is kind of a strange terminology. What? There was no space by him. In other words, what he did was he constricted himself into the middle point of where creation was going to be. But tzimtzem ha'orahu, he constricted that light and made it distance to all of the sides around a middle point, which was where creation was going to be. Then he constricted his infinite light, distancing it to the sides around a center point, leaving a vacated space in the middle of the light of the Ein Sof, right? And the space was perfectly spherical. Why spherical? Okay? Why a sphere and not a square? Right? What's wrong with squares? What's wrong with triangles? Okay? God is an equal opportunity creator. Okay? The idea here is that everybody's going to have equal distance. There's a concept here. And this is abstract here, folks, okay? All right. So here we have the diagram. Of course, a picture speaks 1,000 words. Ignore that second dot behind the curtain, okay? Ignore that second dot in this. Look at the focus on the dot in the middle of the sphere, and there's a sphere. So here you have, so far, 3 characters in the play. You have what's around it. I wrote Or Ein Sof, the light of the infinite. And inside you'll have this vacated space. And in the center you'll have a center point. God needs to make a stage for something else to exist other than him. Because if he's filling all of existence, what can there be? After this constriction took place, there was a place in which all things could be brought into existence, created, formed, and made. And I specifically listed it like that because, of course, this is a hint to what was going to be the 4 worlds. And that's why he also, you'll see when I mentioned earlier why there's a double language, is because everything's going to have to be in a sense of unfolding. Okay? So, after this constriction took place, now there's space for something else to be existing, created, formed, and made. He then drew a simple concentrated ray from the infinite light into the vacated space. The upper extremity of this ray touched the infinite light of the Ein Sof that surrounded the space towards its center. So here you'll see it. The best thing is you just jump ahead right to the picture on page 12, where you'll see the center point, the ray. Yeah. It was in this vacated space that he emanated, created, formed, and made all of the worlds. This ray is a single thin pipe which extends and is drawn from the waters of the cosmic light of the Ein Sof to the worlds which exist in the empty vacated space. They call it in Hebrew the tzinor dak, small pipe, thin pipe. Okay? So here we have 4 characters now in the play. Okay? You have the Or Ein Sof, undifferentiated light. You'll have the sphere, and then you'll have the center point, and then you'll have the ray. Okay? Now, I put this warning here, and it's a huge topic when I put in this warning. Okay? Very abstract. Huh? Nice stuff. Huh? What's he talking about? Where's he going? And the biggest question is this vacation? Is this tzimtzum? Is this constriction where God constricted himself in order that there should be something existing within that constricted space? Is it literal or not literal? Okay? Is it kipshuto or lav kipshuto? Kipshuto means is it to be understood simply as he writes it. This is the biggest Kabbalist of the 16th century bringing this down. Okay? Nobody argued with him. Nobody looked at him and says, you don't know what you're talking about, Rabbi. Right? This is the guy who knew his stuff. So the question is, and actually, my father-in-law was going through a huge thing about a 4-way argument, is it literal or not literal? Okay? And believe it or not, there is a huge tzaddik who wrote in a sefer, the Mishnah's Chassidim, which he did say it's literal. Now, he's just sitting on one side. All the other rabbis, beg to differ extremely, saying with his, in all respect of his holiness and the holiness of this rabbi and his knowledge, he is totally mistaken. This is not to be understood literally. So when you say that, it's not to be understood literally. So then you have to now take a step back and think, okay, and what is it? What's the implication here? Okay, because obviously there's 2 things that are going to be going on simultaneously. There's God's infiniteness, his simple Or Ein Sof, and yet here we are sitting in a room in Houston, Texas, enjoying some kind of existence where really we shouldn't be. Okay? Because if we say that this whole contraction business is not literal, that means God is filling all of existence, and this is all an illusion. Okay? The question is, it's an illusion, okay, but how can we say that? What does that mean? And what's going on here? Okay? So I wrote here the warning, this withdrawing is not to be taken literally, since it is impossible to apply a special concept to God, or spatial it should be. This withdrawing rather is totally conceptual. So we go by most of the Balatanya, the Leshem, right, that it is not literal. It's not to be taken literally, okay? And there are some rabbis who say, yes, you're right, it's not going to be taken literally. The Nefesh HaChaim says, okay? And really what you have, just for simplistic reasons, is we have two concepts. You have the light that's going to be filling the void, the sphere, and you have the light outside of the sphere. Okay, we call it Sovev Kol Olamin, Mamale Kol Olamin. Surrounding light and filling light. And he even goes to say, the filling part, we can't figure it out. So basically, the direction of his writing led people to a concept of, so then I guess we relate to the surrounding light. And we're not going to relate to the light that's filling the void. Because we can't grasp with it. Because if we grasp with it, then where are we? If God is filling all of this existence, and he's right here, right now, then I don't get it. How, if he's all there is, and all there is all there is, and how come we're enjoying this existence here? What's going on? So, in order to help us, he says, we're going to deal with what's the surrounding light. We're going to relate to the Or Ein Sof that's outside the Tzimtzum, because we can't relate to what's inside the Tzimtzum. Now let's get a little bit of a more conceptual something that we can fathom in another way. Okay? Thus, there are four concepts introduced in the contraction. 1, the light of the Ein Sof. 2, the vacated space. 3, the ray. And 4, the center point. And now we're going to get, what does it mean, Rabbi? Give me some stuff. Okay? Here we go. 4 aspects and their representation. This is brought down in a fantastic book called Inner Space by R.A. Kaplan. My father-in-law helped actually to translate some of those works, to write that book, to put that book together. So 1, let's go through and introduce the characters. 1, light of the Ein Sof, alludes to every possible concept of infinite perfection being included within his absolute simple essence. It is also, they'll call it, a garment God created to hide himself, which is kind of strange if we say that. As it says in the verse, God wrapped himself with light like a garment. Okay? So even this Or Ein Sof, it's Or, don't forget we talked about this before, it's emanated by God, but it's not God himself. We can never touch God's essence, but it is the light of God. So he's, so to speak, dressing in this light. Step 2. Vacated space. The creation here, it's a big one, folks. The creation of a concept of lack, or what the book of Zohar refers to, a negative light. Likened to a negative energy field radiating darkness. Here's where we get into the whole idea of God created us for a relationship, right? In order to have a real solid relationship, you have to have the other person choosing to have a relationship with you. Like one woman wrote in a book, you can't dance with a mannequin in the ballroom. That's not a relationship. In other words, to have a puppet, to dance with a puppet, is not much of a relationship. You want a live boy, Pinocchio, right? Or Geppetto, right? Not a puppet, okay? So the issue is, God wants a relationship, the real relationship. So he's got to create a ability for the creation that he's going to have a relationship with to choose. In order to make it to choose, you have to have something else to choose. Correct or not correct, right? It's not like trying to go buy some lotion in the Walgreens, which they have a whole shelf full, and you can spend 5 hours trying to choose there. My wife sent me once. My mother needs a cream. Just go pick up a cream at Walmart. Just go pick up a cream at Walgreens? I'm staring at a shelf here. Are you crazy? Okay? The conceptual space, so God had to create an other than, or an illusion of other than. Okay? In order for us to be constantly playing around with the other than, in order to finally come to the real solid choice of, there's nothing other than God. There's nothing other than God. From our own inner free will decision. But meanwhile, God's got to create a space. Got to create an other than. Okay? The conceptual place where God does not appear to be present. This allows a place for man's free will and accomplishment. In actuality, it is only dark and vacated with respect to us creations. Okay, to God, there is no darkness. Okay, as King David of blessed memory said, even darkness is not dark to you. In other words, for God, there's no such thing. For God, there's no such thing as a vacated space. Okay, night shines like day. The darkness is light. Imagine looking at it from the perspective of God. Okay, now a lot of the huge sages of Israel were able to do this. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he was in the world of Atzilut, the highest. Everything was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Like he'd come and say, my donkey died, right? Awesome, right? My house is burning down. Great. Yeah, you'd probably throw him in an institution. But in those days, no. He would be able to explain to you how everything is for the absolute best for everything. Okay? Because why? Darkness shines like day. Okay? So that's the vacated space. The ray. Oh, the ray. Everything's about the ray. Okay? Through this ray, and it's called a kav in Hebrew. Kav is a very unbelievable word. Okay? Kav. Kav can mean line, but kav means so many other things. Okay? But let's see. I'll bring it in a minute. Through this ray, all creation took place. This ray of light is the potential perfection that man is able to draw down into the world as a result of his awakening from below. I didn't get into this so much, but if you look at that page just back, it started off as a circle, there was a middle point, and then comes from the Or Ein Sof, the top, and extends this ray all the way down from the Or Ein Sof all the way to the center point. Okay? So because this completeness is earned, okay, because the ray of light is the potential perfection that man is able to draw down into the world as a result of his awakening from below. Because this completeness is earned, the purpose of creation is fulfilled, and God's light is revealed in the vacated space, and this is the big one, without overwhelming it. Now, don't forget, God made a vacated space. He made creation. Great. He set a stage that he could go ahead and bestow, right? Now, once he's going to bestow, how's he going to bestow? Because if he starts just doing his thing, which he, it's just that, it's going to be so overwhelming, everything's going to go poof back into existence. As a matter of fact, they go into very detail. There's a lot of chapters that go into detail in this. I'm just giving you like the tip of the iceberg. It talks all about this line, this line, this line. It can't go all the way through, because if it goes all the way through, then everything's going to go back to nothingness, right? Talks all about this line and where it goes and where it stops, and we'll get into that in chapter 2. There's a lot to this line. But just for us to understand, okay? Because this completeness is earned, the purpose of creation is fulfilled, and God's light is revealed in the vacated space without overwhelming it. Because don't forget, God is infinite. The light is so great. But then again, we're so limited. Too much light, and you pop. Okay? So the ray serves as a conduit that the light of the Ein Sof is brought to spread into the entire vacated space. That's the ray. 4, the center point. The final receptacle for the light of the Ein Sof. A symbol for the ultimate vessel would be a dot in infinity because it is a receiving from all sides. Now, if I ask you, when we look at conceptually a vessel, a cup, right? Let's say like that cup of M&Ms right there, okay? Right, a cup, you see, has a limitation to it. It only holds so much. No matter what reservoir or how big you look at it, right? It has a limitation to it. The ultimate sign, the ultimate symbol for a vessel that can receive infinite light, okay? So look at it this way, simply as a blank page is simple light. If I put one dot in that light, okay? So obviously what happens is that dot, you have the differentiation, you have something else other than the white light, and it's because it's a dot. So therefore this dot can receive the light that is all around it, and it is not limited to where it receives from. Almost you could look at it like conceptually a magnet in space or something like that, that can receive from all sides. You know, we look at the letters in the Hebrew alphabet. The letters in the Hebrew alphabet are very dynamic. They're also considered to be vessels. And the way we look at a vessel is which vessel has more light to it than the other ones, right? Is we don't, a lot of times, you know, you have to train yourself. This is a whole bizarre thing, is you look at the black letter on the white parchment. Now, the black letter on the white parchment that we look at, we're used to looking at the black letters. But really, it's not really about the black letters. It's about the white that is around the letters. It brings down in the end of days. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, right? Ben Sarah Sasha, the Barditchever Rebbe, okay? In the end of days, the Torah that we're going to have, we're going to be reading it completely different. Right now, you're reading Vayidaber Hashem Moshe Lemor, and Hashem spoke to Moshe. But, you know, in the end, we're going to be reading a completely different set of values from this black fire on white fire, the black ink on the white parchment. We're going to be looking at the letters, the white around the letters. You can't see it now, okay? But it's going to somehow go into the forefront where it's going to be a completely different thing going on, okay? Completely different access to energy and information that was there, but we weren't aware of it, okay? So the idea really here is if you look at the highest letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the Yud, because why? It's the smallest, and it has the most light around it. When the scribes write any letter, it always starts with a Yud. Every letter starts with the Yud. Of course it does, because you have to put the pen on the paper, on the parchment, okay? So the idea of the ultimate vessel is the point in infinite space, okay? The ray, we're going to have to get a little bit more into, okay? Just to give you some insights that I've, over the years, that I've gotten with the idea of the kav, this ray, okay? Obviously, we're going to look at the center point as being the receptacle, as being our consciousness, okay? And our consciousness is put into a void where what we call the concept of lack. And that itself is an unbelievable concept, and I'm still toying with it today, and I'm going to have to ask some masters about it. Because one set of holy masters say the lack is real, okay? And yet I know some people saying the lack is not real, okay? Yet we are going through our lives experiencing at different times lack here and there, okay? You know, the idea here really goes back to the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, and they were totally considered to be tamim. They were whole. They were complete. They were perfect. And they only had the one commandment not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And then came the serpent, and the serpent says, you know, oh, all the trees you cannot eat? No, just that one you can't eat. You know why God doesn't want you eating from that tree? Right? And so even the most simplest of commentators says because you're going to be like him, knowing good and evil. And of course, the implication, and there's a couple of them in there, there's little subtle implications, is he doesn't want competition. That's why he doesn't tell you to eat. And Rabbi Arush even said it to much more stronger. He hates you. That's why he doesn't want you to eat. That's why he doesn't want you to be like him. But Maharal brings down something very simple. He says, you're really lacking. You don't really have it all. You're lacking something. He doesn't want you to have it, but you're lacking. Obviously, you're lacking. You're lacking that knowledge. Now, the dynamic goes that once they bought into the idea of, okay, we're lacking, we better eat it. We got to eat it, okay? And so they ate from it. They bought into the idea of lack. Once they bought into the idea of lack, they were tam. Tam means tough mem. Tam, they were whole. Tamim tiyeh im Hashem Elokecha. Whole. You walk simply with God. No sophistication, right? Once they ate from that and they bought into the idea of lack, the letters of Taf and Mem switch to mate, dead. Okay, that means death. The day you'll eat from it, you'll die. You bought into lack, so then you get to experience lack. If you don't buy into lack, okay, so then it's a whole different ball game. Okay, and that's really where we have to go. It's a huge idea. Okay, this is the theme in my book. Okay, sorry to get off topic, but the idea of kav comes from a couple of words. We have a phrase which says kaveh el Hashem chazak v'yametz libeka. Kaveh el Hashem. Hope. Now I'm going to literally translate it, even though that's not the correct translation. Kaveh el Hashem, hope to God, or really they say pray to God. Kaveh el Hashem chazak v'yametz, strengthen your heart. V'kaveh el Hashem, and hope to God. That's how they were literally translated. The word ani mikaveh, I hope, right? But really that's not the correct word. I saw it today. Rabbi Rieti in a sefer, he explains the word kaveh also comes from the root of mikvah. Mikvah is what? It's the water, the body of water where we go and immerse in to become pure. Okay? Mikvah. So what is it? We go into the mikvah and we're only hoping that we'll get to come out pure? It's so not true. Expect. The word kaveh means expect. It's an unbelievable thing because really what it is this huge shift in the mentality in terms of our relationship to God. Not now, I have a tough time with the word expectation. It's the mother of all suffering. Okay? So obviously it has to be a healthy type of expecting. Okay, not somebody who has like off-the-wall expectations, but really what it is in terms of our relationship to God. Picture yourself now. You're the dot. You're in the center of the vacated space. And comes the line. The line only comes because you are mikaveh. Only because you have this expectation for a relationship. A sincere one. Okay? The other thing I wanted to share with you about the word kaveh, which is line, or the ray, or the kav, okay, is that, and this kind of on the same theme, okay, is when you are, the Ramchal brings down that there is a force that no matter, if a person is in Gehenna is like hell, okay, that you will be pulled out of hell, okay, and the force is kaveh, which is the ray or the line. And people will say it hope, but really it's not that. Okay? In other words, the force that pulls a person out of hell, okay, whether it's in this world or in another dimension, is lekaveh, is to hope. But we'll say it in this way, to expect. In other words, if you're in a relationship, of course, is there not expectations in relationships? I hate to say that there should be, because I'm the person who should eradicate it. And really, it's our thing to eradicate all of our expectations in order to be happy in a relationship. Okay? But still, there are certain expectations. Okay? So, even those, right? You can't be no expectations whatsoever. So, when a person is in Gehenna, this energy of kaveh, of hoping, is the force that pulls a person out of Gehenna. Okay? Okay, so now we got these four characters. Okay? We have the lack, the Or Ein Sof, the lack, the ray, and then the center point. Now, let's pull it together into something even more tangible. In summary, although these concepts are portrayed in a certain imagery, they are not to be taken literally, are only what we call borrowed terminology. Most of the Kabbalah, I'll always emphasize this, is borrowed terminology, okay? We always have to say this, okay? And I'll get into that later. They are points of reference to grasp the deeper concepts that they represent. What we have before us is a paradigm of the entire creation, from the beginning to the end. From when it went up in the supernal will to bestow infinite pleasure, which was creating the Or Ein Sof, to the point where the creation receives the pleasure and is not overwhelmed by it. Okay? The light goes into the center point. The main idea of the contraction, therefore, is to allude to the concept of allowing space for free will and for us to utilize that opportunity. I was getting on the phone conversation yesterday with somebody, and they have a lot of hardships, and he was sharing with me some good news about some things, but I know he has a lot of periods of his life where he goes through hardships, and I say, when those hardships happen, you have to say, thank you, God, for giving me the great opportunity to trust in you. Okay? When things are going good, it's easy to trust in God. Okay? It's when there's a vacated space, what am I? Where are you? Right? Where are you? Right? That's where you go, the very first thing to start off with is, thank you, God, for this very special opportunity now for me to trust you and have faith in you. Trust. Bitachon. The final rectification will be ending in overcoming overwhelming. The final rectification will be ending in overcoming our sense of inadequacy in receiving a light that is so beyond. The world was created and man was placed in conceptual darkness. Conceptual darkness. We don't see God all the time. We don't see God hardly. It's very hard. You have to look for him. The darkness being the vacated space. And it's not a literal vacated space. Really, it could be any place in a person's life where he feels things are out of control. Any control freaks here? Don't answer. Or he thinks he has total control, right? Right? It's the way of nature. Even that person that annoys you, that's called vacated space. Right? But don't raise your hand. So a person has a vacated space, and it does like it's conceptual. Any place where you don't see God 100% in your life. That's called vacated space. Baruch Hashem, thank you, God, for the vacated space. Thank you. Because why? It's a great opportunity. So then a person has a vacated space and must then awaken himself by realizing that the only one who can fill that space is the Ein Sof, the unlimited isness, our Creator. Okay? Not your Uncle Bob, not your rich Aunt Judy, okay? Ain't gonna save you, right? Not the stocks, for sure not. Definitely not the President of the United States of America, okay? Don't go singing songs about him, okay? The awakening, it's only God, everything is God, whether it's illness, financial, trouble with kids, whatever it is in your life. Baruch Hashem, thank you, God. I get to now utilize a unique opportunity I have now to trust you. Because then what happens? You're allowing the Kav to come into your life in a way that you can handle it. The awakening of man draws down the light, the ray, into the vacated space in a way that man can accept it and yet not be overwhelmed by it. The ray is the conceptual ladder man climbs through his exercise of free will and determination to eventually bring completion upon himself and the entire world. Okay? So the exercise here is, you could fill this out on your own. Where's the vacated space in your life? Where in your life or the world or creation do you think surely there is no God there? Right? It can be people, places, things, or incidences in your life. Go ahead and fill it. Okay? And of course, the idea here is to understand all of creation, all of mankind, all of humanity. We're all in this place where, believe me, if you saw God, everybody would be completely different. Okay? And we'll get into that later in Mirz Hashem. Realizations. Okay? I always got to bring this down because you have to drive it home. Can I realize now that just by noticing that it is a vacated space, I am now aware of the opportunity I now have to be a partner with God and choose to allow the unlimited Ein Sof, the light of God, to fill this place of lack in any way He pleases. I can hardly wait to see how God is going to fill this void. That awareness and awakening with trust, bitachon, is the first thing needed to allow God to fill that space. The kaveh is the idea of awakening to what? Choosing. There's no one else who's going to solve this problem except God. And that's the first commandment. Okay? The very first commandment we heard on Shavuos is Anochi Hashem Elokecha Asher Hotzeisicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am Hashem, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Now, there's a lot to say about it. Too much. Books written. But really, you have to understand it's Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am Hashem, your God. First of all, Elokecha is singular. It's not I am God, your God, plural. I am your God, singular. But the interesting part was Asher Hotzeisicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Now, why didn't you say, why done the introductory statement here, right, in this, right, match? I'm God who created everything, right? Well, I don't say that. No. Okay. The idea really here is because I brought you out of the land of Egypt. Egypt is the symbol, the paradigm for a tight spot. Because that's what it literally means. Mitzrayim means Meitzar Yam. Meitzar, it means constricted. Yam means sea. Tight spot. In other words, there's nothing else that'll ever get you out of a tight spot except God. Don't ever think otherwise. As a matter of fact, all of the Hasidic masters consider this thinking idolatry. Okay? To think that there's something else that's going to solve your problems, never think that. It always comes down to one thing, the kav. It only comes from you, God. So here we have something now to think about. You have been exposed, folks, okay? Any questions?
I have some.
Yeah.
The line, the ray that you're talking about